Graceland has always been shrouded in mystery, whispered about in hushed tones by fans and insiders alike. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared the world for what was discovered beneath the king's legendary mansion. After nearly 5 decades of secrecy, a door that had remained sealed since Elvis's death was finally pried open. This wasn't just another dusty relic or forgotten room. It was the basement, long rumored to be off-limits for a reason. What lay beneath wasn't just shocking, it was reality-breaking. Artifacts frozen in time, cryptic notes written in Elvis's own hand, unreleased recordings, and a living, breathing presence no one had accounted for. This discovery doesn't just challenge what we knew about Elvis, it shatters the narrative. Because when they opened that basement door, someone was already in there, the forbidden floor. They said it was just a house, a museum, a memorial, a place where fans could stand still in time, frozen in the golden glow of a legend who changed music forever. But deep beneath Graceland's velvet ropes and carefully polished displays, below the jungle room, below the glittering hall of gold records, something was quietly pulsing. Untouched, undisturbed, intentionally ignored for nearly half a century. Since Elvis Presley's death in 1977, Graceland became sacred ground. Millions of fans from every corner of the globe walked its halls, whispered reverent words by the gates, and left flowers at his grave. Tour guides spoke of legacy, of family, of the king's final days upstairs. But one level was left out of every brochure, every souvenir map, every whispered story. The basement. It wasn't just excluded, it was erased. No public access, no guided tours, no photographs. Even longtime employees were said to avoid it completely. The reason given? Preserved for privacy. But that was a lie. Because behind the silence, insiders told a darker tale, one where the door wasn't locked from the outside, but from the inside. And no one ever explained how. In early 2025, after nearly 5 decades sealed shut, the lock finally gave way. What they found down there wasn't just private, it was impossible. And it begged one haunting question. Did Elvis ever really leave? Cracking open the mystery, it started as a whisper. Then came the press release. Graceland officials made it. Sound routine, just a quiet scheduled renovation, structural maintenance, preservation efforts. Nothing unusual, they insisted. Nothing newsworthy. But behind closed doors, it wasn't routine. It was red alert. Panic met protocol. Confidential memos flew. Because this wasn't about fresh paint or replacing pipes. This was about unlocking something that had been sealed shut for 48 years, deliberately. A private team was assembled, not your usual crew. These were hand-picked specialists, historians, security experts, and document preservationists, all sworn to secrecy under ironclad NDAs. They carried not just tools, but advanced archival scanning gear and high-grade containment equipment. Their objective? To enter the basement. The one place even Elvis's most trusted inner circle had quietly avoided since 1977. They approached the narrow staircase, long hidden behind a false wall. Dust choked the air. Peeling wallpaper curled like dried leaves. Their flashlights scanned. The shadows in each step downward seemed to echo a little too loudly. The air was thick, not just with mildew but with memory. And the silence wasn't quiet. It was a hum. A pressure, like the whole house was holding its breath. Then came the moment. At the bottom, a single bulb swung on a frayed cord. Its dim light revealed shapes frozen in time, furniture under dust-covered sheets, a vintage turntable still holding a warped record. A pair of Elvis's signature sunglasses sat atop a crushed velvet cushion, untouched. And then they saw it. A door. Slightly ajar. No lock. Just waiting. And from the dark sliver behind it, something shifted. Was it an animal? A squatter? A trick of the light? Or had someone somehow been down there all along? What they discovered next left even the seasoned crew speechless. The hidden TV room. The moment they stepped inside, it felt like walking into a perfectly preserved moment in time. Not a replica. Not a reconstruction. The real thing, untouched, for decades. The first room they entered was the legendary TV room. A space fans had heard whispers about for years but never glimpsed with their own eyes. It was almost mythic, described in passing, mentioned in biographies, but never shown to the public. Elvis was known for his obsession with staying informed, and there they were. 3 vintage television sets lined up side by side just as the story said. Still intact, still aimed at a low-slung couch, still silently glowing with ghostly static, as if waiting for him to return and catch the evening news. The decor was unmistakably Elvis. Bold black and yellow walls, mirrored ceilings, shag carpet, and most striking of all, a vivid lightning bolt stretching across the far wall, echoing the iconic TCB motto, taking care of business in a flash. It wasn't just a room. It was a time capsule of his personality. Old magazines sat stacked on a side table, their covers yellowed with age. Empty soda bottles gathered dust beside an ashtray. Even a pair of loafers rested near the couch, facing the television, like their owner had just stepped out to answer the door. There were no staged props, no cryptic messages, no hidden diary pages waiting to be found. Just Elvis, frozen in absence. But then, just as the crew began to adjust to the surreal quiet, it changed. A creaking sound echoed from beyond the far wall. Not the random groan of a settling floorboard. Not the soft drip of old plumbing. This was different. It was slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Footsteps, and they were coming from beyond the pool room. The pool room, frozen in time. Then came the pool room, arguably one of the most visually mesmerizing and mysterious spaces in all of Graceland. Unlike anything else in the mansion, this room wasn't just decorated, it was transformed. Every inch of ceiling and wall was covered in pleated multicolored fabric, hand-draped in a hypnotic swirl of blues, golds, and burnt orange. The design felt like a dream frozen in 1974, almost hallucinatory in its boldness. This was Elvis's escape within an escape. A place where he could shoot pool, laugh with close friends, or simply disappear from the public gaze. It was private, personal, and entirely his. When the restoration team stepped inside, the air shifted. Time didn't feel like it had passed. It felt paused. The pool table stood exactly where it always had, its felt still intact, balls racked as if a game had ended mid-shot. Custom lighting fixtures, now flickering back to life with restored power, cast amber hues across the richly textured walls. Cue racks, leather chairs, and even unopened cigarette packs sat untouched, preserved like sacred relics. The room was flawless. Too flawless. That's when someone pointed it out. The silence. Not just quiet, but the kind of silence you feel in your chest. The kind of silence that only exists in places completely abandoned by life. Untouched by even a breath of movement. There was no dust trail, no footprints. Yet nothing had tripped the basement's advanced security sensors, installed years ago and monitored routinely. And yet, not a single alarm had gone off. It didn't add up. That's when the whispers started, among the crew. Not about history, but about presence. Was this room truly undisturbed for nearly 5 decades? Or had someone, or something, been keeping silent watch from the shadows all along? The unexpected guest. What happened next wasn't paranormal, but it was just as unsettling. There were no flickering apparitions, no ghostly whispers or cold spots. But the feeling in the room shifted all the same, as the team continued their careful sweep through the pool room, scanning the walls and checking for structural vulnerabilities. One of the techs caught something, a movement, quick and silent in the corner of their vision. This time, it wasn't a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. It was real. No one emerged from the shadows. No figure stood waiting. But tucked behind a sagging curtain and a warped panel of decorative molding was something far more compelling. A passage. It was narrow, low-ceilinged, and led into a space that hadn't been mentioned in any official documentation. Not the Graceland tour maps, not the estate's floor plans, not even the internal schematics used by maintenance crews. Longtime staff People who had worked on the property for decades were stunned. None of them had ever seen or heard of it. At the end of the corridor was a sealed chamber, its entrance marked only by dust and time. Inside were dozens of storage crates sealed with age tape and stamped with inventory codes dating back to the late 1970s. The air was denser here, still, watchful. And within those crates, artifacts long assumed lost or destroyed. There were items unmistakably personal: Elvis's books, clothes, notes scribbled on cocktail napkins, a box of 8mm home movies, the kind families once passed down like heirlooms, and stacked neatly to the side, a series of reel-to-reel audio recordings, each one labeled by hand, each one untouched for nearly half a century. Security and estate historians were called in immediately. Phones were silenced. The perimeter tightened. What was on those tapes, and what else might be hidden among the personal effects, has never been fully disclosed. Not to the press, not to the fans. But one crew member, speaking anonymously later, described what they heard on the first tape: unexpected, intimate, and hauntingly personal. It didn't sound like a performance, it didn't sound like a rehearsal. It sounded like a man speaking into the void, trying to leave behind one last message. And it raised a question no one dared say aloud. Was Elvis trying to tell us something from beneath his own home? DY's confession. In the days following the basement's reopening, archivists began piecing together a clearer picture of what the space meant to Elvis. Records suggest he spent a significant amount of time down there, during the final years of his life, not just to relax but to retreat. The basement wasn't just a lounge or a game room, it was a private sanctuary. Stacks of vinyl, personal notes, and old audio equipment were carefully arranged, almost as if preserved by Elvis himself. Among the most fascinating finds were several locked cases containing handwritten journals, unopened letters, and reel-to-reel tapes labeled only with dates, some of them just weeks before his death in August 1977. Historians believe these weren't meant for public release. They may have been Elvis's most personal recordings, thoughts, musings, or even confessions he never intended to share. While no one has claimed that Elvis feared surveillance, it's long been known that he had a deep mistrust of the press, the government, and even some members of his inner circle. What's clear now is this: the basement didn't just hold memorabilia. It held the private side of a man the world thought they already knew. And it's only now, nearly 5 decades later, that we're beginning to see the truth, the shocking tape. Word of the basement discovery spread like wildfire, first through private circles, whispered among collectors, estate insiders, and music historians. But it didn't take long for the story to escape into the wider world. Graceland officials moved quickly, issuing a carefully worded statement. It confirmed that a previously sealed section of the basement had been reopened as part of a broader preservation and structural review. They called it routine, standard, expected. But those who'd been inside knew better. The public was told that vintage items had been recovered: retro electronics, period decor, and some of Elvis's personal belongings. Some of these, the statement said, may be included in upcoming exhibits, a new attraction perhaps. But when asked about the most sensitive finds, Elvis's handwritten journals, sealed crates of personal letters, and most notably, the reel-to-reel audio tapes, Graceland officials offered no further comment, no timeline, no commitment, just silence. And in that silence, theories grew louder. What was really on those tapes? Were they ramblings, confessions, or carefully chosen words meant to be discovered decades later? Was Elvis, knowingly or not, recording a farewell? A truth only meant to be heard when the world was finally ready? So far, no full contents have been made public, just fragments, rumors, a few cryptic leaks. And while the world waits, one thing has become unmistakably clear. That basement wasn't just a storage space. It was a sanctuary, a hidden vault of memory, mystery, and meaning. Elvis's voice, raw, reflective, and unfiltered, has begun to echo out from beneath the surface. And nearly 50 years later, for the first time, it's finally being heard. Now, the world is watching. As news of the basement discovery spreads, a renewed wave of curiosity has swept through the Elvis community. Die-hard fans, music historians, and even skeptics are now turning their attention back to Graceland, not for nostalgia, but for answers. What exactly did Elvis leave behind down there? How much of it was intentional, and how much simply forgotten? Over time, and most importantly, what will the public be allowed to see, hear, or read? According to estate sources, sections of the basement have now been resealed as preservation experts and archivists begin the long, meticulous process of cataloging everything found. No unauthorized personnel are allowed inside. But one thing is absolutely clear. Elvis Presley's legacy still holds secrets. They weren't buried. They weren't lost. They were sitting in silence beneath the floors of Graceland, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. And whether it's another tape, a handwritten letter, or a memory frozen in time, what comes next could change everything we thought we knew about the king. What do you think Elvis was hiding down there? Was Danny telling the truth? Or was this all part of something even bigger? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more shocking reveals from inside Graceland and beyond, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the king may be gone, but his secrets are only just beginning to surface.